Welcome, friends. I am Dr. V.K. Chauhan, homeopathic physician. Revise with me the homeopathic remedy acetic acid. This is part 4, clinical correlation, and it is taken from Allen's keynote, and this is best suitable for homeopathic students, interns, and UPSC aspirants. So let us go ahead. So this is the total drug what we see in Allen's keynote. Just for your reminder, what we are going to do is we are going to fragment this particular total haphazard drug picture into a serial wise numbers, and that is how it is. Number 1 PQR or keynote is adapted to pale lean persons. Second important PQR is hemorrhages. Third is the marasmus and other wasting diseases of children. Fourth PQR is great prostration. Fifth PQR is the thirst. And sixth one is sour belching and vomiting. Seventh is diarrhea. Eighth gives us the idea about croup. And ninth is inhalation of vapor of cedar vinegar. 10th is cannot sleep, lying on black aggravates, causes breathlessness. And 11th is hectic fever. So this is the total core idea around which this drug revolves in Allen's keynote. So these are the very direct kind of diagnostics, homeopathic prescription point of view are here. So let us elaborate. The first PQR is adapted to the pale, lean persons with lax flabby muscles. Face is pale and waxy. Our clinical correlation tells us that this patient, these features especially, would like to point us to number 1, anemic state. Maybe it is because of the chronic hemorrhages. It can be internal or external hemorrhages. Internal hemorrhages generally takes place in the GIT, which at times may remain obscure, and unless and until you are going to investigate, you will never be able to settle down the source of loss of blood. Anyway, the lean persons, lean, thin, tall person, they suggest that the body weight is less and the frame of the body or structure of the body is predominantly ectomorphic, like phosphorus or say for sulfur. So these people are very sensitive people. Lax flabby muscles point to dedicate person with sedentary habits because they are not using their muscles, they are not building their muscles, so their muscles are in a very bad situation. They are wasted muscles, generally disuse atrophy, you can say. And waxy skin observed in roughly 50% of diabetic patients with long standing diseases. And apart from this, some of the cases may also belong to renal disorder, nephrotic syndrome, where we will have the edema as well as anemia as well as waxy skin. Please don't forget that important point. The second important PQR is the hemorrhages from every mucous outlet: nose, throat, lungs, stomach, bowel, uterus. In females, metorrhagia is there, vicarious. In place of menses, we have nasal bleed and traumatic epistaxis. So easy bleeding, tendency for bleeding is there. We would like to clinically correlate this condition. Common causes, we are going to see what are the common causes of mucosal bleeding. These include reduced number of functional platelet. Sometimes it is caused because of drug induced like aspirin and other blood thinners people are taking nowadays under the supervision of their medical facility, whosoever is treating them. And there are enough reasons to take these particular drugs. Skin, you will find if the bleeding is mild. Please remember, in mild bleeding there is epithegy, bruises, gum and mucous membrane bleeding. There are another group of bleeding disorders which are genetic, and these are hemophilia. Usually it affects the males. One, Willebrand disease. It affects the both male as well as females. And there are acquired bleeding disorders like liver diseases, cirrhosis of liver, where ultimately you will find the vitamin K deficiency occurs and patient starts bleeding. In a scurvy, generally the capillary is becoming very fragile, so capillary hemorrhage is commonly seen in cases of scurvy, which is because of the vitamin C deficiency. Nowadays it is not seen as much what it used to be seen in those days when this Materia Medica was written. The third PQR is the marasmus and other wasting diseases of children. We have similar drugs, abrotinum, iodinum, sanicula and tuberculinum. Our clinical correlation goes as under: the marasmus is common under 1 year of age. It is a severe type of nutritional deficiency where there is marked wasting of fat, muscles and tissues of the body. Even the calorie giving food is not there, carbohydrates are not there. So ultimately the child is going to develop marasmus, and then the child will develop kwashiorkor. The most common causes, they include chronic starvation, contaminated water causing chronic diarrhea, as we see in cases of acetic acid. And the third, which is very important for us in the poor third world countries like we have African nations, inadequate food intake, which is combined with vitamin deficiencies. The fourth PQR is the great prostration after injuries, after surgical shock, after anesthetic. The clinical correlation goes as: the great prostration after injuries, like injuries associated with bleeding, may cause prostration due to anemic state. Surgical shock, which usually results from the loss of blood during surgery. This condition is no more seen nowadays, as the current surgical procedures are much advanced and availability of blood transfusion is always there. Anesthetics. Nowadays again you will find that anesthetics are also greatly improved. So those crude anesthetics are no more there. So this kind of a severe prostration after anesthetic is also not seen so commonly what we have been written or what we are looking at in this particular remedy. So according to the time and circumstances with present condition, given condition, we need to correlate the things. So this particular important area is a dead materia medica for us. Fifth PQR is the thirst, intense, burning, unsatiable, even for large quantities, in dropsy, diabetes, and chronic diarrhea, but no thirst in fever. So clinical correlation is in dropsy or anasarca, which can be caused by congestive cardiac failure, renal failure, what we generally call nephrotic syndrome, or severe anemia, hypoproteinemia, We need to identify which is the real cause, and we have to plan treatment according to that particular diagnostic specialty. In nephrotic syndrome, you have to investigate, see the blood picture, see the anemia, see the blood urea, creatinine, see the cholesterol, and secondary hypertension. So, what kind of food you will give to such people who are in renal failure, in congestive cardiac failure? You will restrict the salt, you will give him the proper position, and because of there is liver enlarged, tender, swollen, portal hypertension is also there, the food is not going to get absorbed. So what kind of a food is to be given to such patients? In severe anemia and hypoproteinemia, protein replacement is very important. So you will go for high protein diet. There are people who are vegetarian, and non-vegetarian do not have much problem, but then vegetarians will require a kind of a protein which they find suitable for them. Anyway, so next is the diabetes. In case of diabetes, especially we are talking about type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes needs a very different protocol of treatment, where it is essential to go for insulin replacement therapy. But type 2 diabetes, where you will find that the patient has got frequency of urination, that can cause polydipsia. If you control the diabetes properly, polydipsia will go away. Third condition what we see is a chronic diarrhea. You need to correct the cause of chronic diarrhea, whether the patient is simply suffering from gluten intolerance, lactose intolerance, or he has got chronic gastrointestinal tract infection, giardiasis or amoebiasis, that needs to be properly evaluated, investigated, and then you can start your treatment. Of course, your medicine is very good, but unless and until you take concurrent help from the investigation and diagnosis, your treatment may be incomplete, or there can be relapses, frequent relapses, which you need to be very careful about. The sixth PQR is sour belching and vomiting of pregnancy, burning water brush, profuse salivation, day and night. Some of the important remedies which have the similar complaints, we have Merxol and others. The clinical correlation here stands as vomiting of pregnancy. It is very common in the first trimester of the pregnancy. However, some pregnant women experience excessive nausea and vomiting. Burning water brush. A water brush is a symptom of gastroesophageal reflux disease. Sometimes it is called the acid brush. The acid mixes with the excess saliva during reflux, and there is a lot of burning pain in the upper abdomen and behind the sternum also, which is heartburn. In chronic cases where GERD is persisting throughout years, in a chronic course, maybe upper GIT mucosa will be eroded, and the patient may have the gastric ulcer, and that gastric ulcer has a great chance of developing into cancer stomach, which is commonly seen as a symptom of acetic acid. Seventh PQR is the diarrhea, copious, exhausting, great thirst in dropsy, typhus, phthisis with night sweats. So clinical correlation is in diarrhea in typhus. Typhus consists of three different diseases, three different types of typhus, all of which are recoverable vector borne by arthropods. And there is epidemic typhus, we have murine typhus and scrub typhus. These infections are not seen nowadays. Please remember, this is an old story. So it is a historical thing which props up in our materia medica, but then we find this particular diagnostic is I have not seen in my 45 years practice. And diarrhea, which is copious, exhausting, again we go for clinical correlation, phthisis, and tuberculosis, which can almost always can affect the every organ system in the body, but GIT is also no exception. Suppose somebody has got pulmonary tuberculosis, and instead of throwing the sputum out, he swallows the sputum, so ultimately the GIT will also get affected. And in tubercular affection of the GIT, we will find diarrhea is very, very common symptom. There is a colicky abdominal pain, weight loss, and low grade fever is very, very classical. Doughy feeling, if you have seen such cases, probably if you feel the abdomen, the classical doughy feeling will be there. And the chronic diarrhea is an uncommon symptom, but this may occur in ulcerative type of intestinal TB. Please remember, as per the National Health Policy Guidelines, if you diagnose a case of pulmonary tuberculosis, please refer to tubercular cases to DOT center and don't treat them yourself. That is a personal advice. Next, 8th PQR is the true croup, hissing respiration, cough with inhalation. The similar drug you will find is a spongia. And he says last stages. Who is going to wait for the last stages? Again, it is a dead materia medica for us. Please ignore such things, and please be careful about such things. Don't wait for disease to get aggravated to the stages where you want to prescribe to get a miraculous kind of a result. Don't expect those things, will never happen. In croup, you will find there is a laryngotracheitis and subglottis laryngitis. This part is the narrowest part of respiratory tract, and because of this is a already narrowest part, if there is a inflammation, mucosal inflammation, so it will obstruct the air passage, and it is also known as laryngotracheobronchitis. This arrow mark shows a very important area where there is the air shadow is not there in the trachea. Below we'll find in the trachea is there, but where the larynx is there, larynx is there, we don't find any air shadow. This, the steeple sign as seen in AP neck X-ray of a child with croup. That is what we are looking at this particular X-ray. And now let us go to the text. The croup is a viral infection and causes swelling of the larynx, trachea, and bronchi. The swelling produces airway obstruction, which when becomes significant leads to dramatically increased work on breathing. The patient is breathless, and the characteristic turbulent, noisy airflow is known as stridor. Stridor is a classical pathognomic feature of croup. Nowadays, what we see is there is a Westies score which classifies the croup severity. We have to quantify everything. We cannot say mild, moderate, severe. We try to quantify those things, and there are certain salient features which you can see yourself and you can observe and note it down. So the following are the features. So and number of points are assigned to each feature, like features are chest wall restriction, stridor, cyanosis, level of consciousness, and air entry. These 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 points are seen, and we have 0 to 5 grades. So if chest wall retraction is not seen, 0, stridor is not there, 0, Cyanosis is not there, zero. Level of consciousness is normal, well oriented, normal. And then air entry, there is no sound, this is normal. But if the grade 1 is there, then it is mild. Grade 1 is mild, chest wall retraction during inspiration and stridor with agitation. These are the features which you will see. On air entry, you will see that it is decreased. So this patient has got mild symptomatology, and here we will find the at the 2 there is chest wall restriction is moderate, stridor at rest, and air entry is markedly decreased. And then you find at the severe stage chest wall restriction is very marked. And then 4th stage is patient is cyanosed with agitation. There is a cyanosis. Cyanosis has been not present into the 0, 1, 2, 3 stages, but then the 4th we have cyanosis, and it is associated with agitation, means patient is restless, but further increase of cyanosis takes place. You will find the patient becomes lethargic and at rest also, patient is cyanosed, and then because of the low level of oxygen available to the brain, the patient becomes disoriented. These features are to be noted. And then what we say in the last stages, a total score of plus minus 2 indicates mild group. A total score of 3 to 5 is classified as moderate group, and you will find a total score of 6 to 11 is severe group. It also presents with obvious stridor, but also features marked chest wall indrawing. That is very important. A total score of plus minus 12 will indicate impending respiratory failure. The barking cough and stridor may no longer be prominent at this stage. Please don't confuse that your patient is getting better, so the symptoms are not. Symptoms are far advanced. He has got no energy to respond to those things. So what is the clinical correlation in severe cases where the last stages are depicted in our materia medica? So here the severity of the group is the total score may be 6 to 11, and impending respiratory failure, total score will be more than roughly 12 plus minus 12. So this is the best to be treated emergency setup. In case of emergency, the best approach is antipathic or allopathic treatment, because it is a mechanical cause. It is going to respond with certain instrumentation. It involves steroids and oxygen therapy. So let us not wait for the last stages. You have to be active interventionist. You should not be a passive interventionist. You allow the symptom to develop, and then you see the materia medica, you see that particular drug, you are very happy and going to describe that drug. That is not done. Let us not invite any kind of a complications. Treat in the initial stages so the progress will be arrested. Some of the cases in emergency will require endotracheal intubation. That is how they are going to open up the respiratory passage. Anyway, the next important PQR is, ninth one, is inhalation of vapor of cider. Cider vinegar has been successfully used in the croup and malignant diphtheria. So this is an old practice. At that time, no advancement was present in the medical science, and medical science was still in the very rudimentary stages. So whatever they could do, they have been doing that, and they have been reporting truthfully, which is we see in our materia medica today, which is available to us. But then that is not the current medical practice. So again, this part of the materia medica needs to be discarded altogether, should not be dependent upon. The diphtheria is a very serious infection caused by the strains of bacteria called Corynebacterium diphtheriae. That has got certain toxins which get into the circulation, and they are going to affect the nerves and heart and other things. So it can lead to difficulty in breathing, and they can go for myocarditis in the heart failure, even the paralysis and death can take place. It is a serious issue. Since it is an infectious disease, nowadays the concept is to treat such conditions in the infectious disease hospital. If at all you see such patient, you need to report to the health authorities and shift those patients to the medical facility where they are treated in a far better manner. So it is in brief what we are going to see in case of diphtheria. We have the throat infection. We can have pharyngeal diphtheria, tonsillar diphtheria, nasal diphtheria, or you can say laryngeal. So according to the place of the infection, you will find the patch, pseudomembrane will be there. If you take it out, it will bleed. Symptoms: a thick gray membrane covering the throat, tonsils may be seen. Symptoms may look like sore throat and hoarseness. There are glands which are swollen in the cervical lymph nodes are swollen and enlarged. There is a difficulty in breathing, and also there is a tachypnea is there, nasal discharge is there, fever and chill, which shows the infection. The cause of this infection is a airborne droplet infection, so you can understand it is a very highly contagious disease, and it contaminates personal items also, and contaminated household items are very important things. If you are going to touch, you are also going to get infected. So it needs isolation. The very important fact we would like to point it out at this moment is the most important preventive measures is the National Health Policy recommends vaccines for infants, children, teens and adults to prevent diphtheria. And because of this particular measure, we find diphtheria no more very commonly seen in our day-to-day primary healthcare practice. But active cases of diphtheria, if you see, are to be reported to the health authorities. Once again, I am going to remind you, and they should be treated entirely in isolation in infectious disease hospital. The 10th point is cannot sleep lying on the back, sleeps better on the back. A sensation of sinking into the abdomen causing dyspnea, rest better lying on the belly. Ammonium carb is one of the remedies, similar symptoms. Arsenic is also there. So the patient cannot lie supine, and in prone position this acetic acid patient finds relief. This peculiar symptom, there are few patients that their lungs open up when they lie on the abdomen and find breathing getting better. And recently it has been seen that only a small number of patients, but this study shows that many patients did not reopen their lungs under the high positive pressure like in ventilator, and may be exposed to more harm than benefit in trying to increase the pressure in ventilation. Please remember this fact. And by contrast, the lung improves when the patient is in a prone position. Considering this can be done, it is important for the management of the patient with severe COVID-19 requiring mechanical ventilation. Professor Paul, he is from China. He has seen many cases and he has reported this particular fact. The 11th PQR point is a hectic fever, skin dry and hot, red spot on the left cheek and drenching night sweats. So these are concomitant symptoms, corroborative symptom, a club of the symptoms where they say it is present. It is a classical indication of this particular remedy. However, by the current medical knowledge, the hectic fever is something like a septic fever, and fever variation between the highest and lowest temperature is very large, more than 5 centigrades. This type of fever is seen in septicemia, and septicemia could be caused by lung abscess, liver abscess, empyema, subdiaphragmatic abscess, septicemia, And rarely in cases of the advanced tuberculosis which there is a cavity formation and there can be further secondary infection could have taken place. So, hectic fever is a very highly non-specific term and clinical meaningless by current considerations in the medical science. What you have to do is you have to go for again investigation, workup, investigate chest X-rays, CT, blood examination, CBC, and fix the diagnosis. If septicemia is the condition, as we know, is a very hectic fever is generally because of septicemia. Cause could be in the liver, could be in the abdomen, could be in the lung or somewhere else, but it is best treated as a medical emergency. You cannot prescribe medicine and watch what is going to happen. This is a very serious situation, rather a medical emergency. So one should not wait and keep watching, rather than send the patient for antipathic management, which is the best thing to be done. Thank you very much for your patient listening. Thanks once again.